Let's talk about the number one reason why most investors fail in the market. And that means whether they fail in terms of washing out, losing the majority of their capital, or also kind of freezing up and being unable to kind of really get the most out of the market. I've seen both sides of this. Now, no one's immune to this. And I've seen this applied to professionals. I've seen good friends of mine make millions of dollars, lose millions of dollars. Some guys, unfortunately, wash out of the business. Some guys reach heights that you wouldn't have expected someone to reach. And I've also seen a lot of just regular people do fantastic, incredible stuff, but then also run into some significant problems down the road. So there's a key reason. It's not a simple tool. It's not because people didn't cut their losses. The reason goes much deeper. Now, whenever you approach markets, most people think of only one part of the process. And to make matters worse is that the markets themselves will change throughout the economic cycle. So you may be doing amazing in one part of the market cycle. Fantastic. It suits your personality. It suits your process. And then when you finally run into a more difficult market, or just a market that just is not conducive to your strategy, you can wipe out if you're being too aggressive. So the biggest reason most people fail is they don't have a holistic strategy. They don't see how it all comes together. They have some crucial errors. Even one crucial point of failure in your system is enough to wipe you out at some point. And the reality is markets cycle so often, it's almost a certainty it's going to come and get you at some point in time. That's why people can be doing amazing for 2-3 years, and then you look back and they wiped out. Now, if you look at other industries, if you look at engineering, if you look at programming, most people will look at the entire process as a whole to make sure that they don't make any critical errors. Investors don't seem to approach this system the same way. The first book I ever read on investing was How to Make Money in Stocks by William O'Neill. Most people who love growth investing, such as myself, will say you need to read that book 5, 6, 7, 8 times. And in fact, I probably read it more times than that. Actually, I'm sure I did. Why is that? It's because although each part of the book, each part of a process may not seem overly complicated, bringing it all together is where people make mistakes because you don't see how it's all linked together. Now, what I want to do is I recently created a white paper, we just released it last week, where you can get a complete breakdown of my process. But more importantly is I included all of the goals and also the flow chart as to how everything is related together. This is critical because, again, like I mentioned before, if you're an engineer, if you're a programmer, you're going to build a flow chart of your process. You're going to know what steps you're taking first, what do you do in certain situations, what do you do if there's a failure. So when you're implementing a system, you know exactly how to react, where to react, and where you'll likely see points of failure. Investors kind of hop into the market, they get one part of the system down right, and then eventually they kind of run into trouble. So if we take a look, for example, at this part of the flow chart, I have the buy part of the strategy. We broke it into buying, holding, and selling. You can see on the right hand of the flow chart, you have all of the tools that I use. In the middle of the flow chart are the decisions I have to make. And on the left-hand side, we have the risks and the rules. And so this really encompasses the entire process. And you see how each part of the process is related to the whole. This is important because most people will, for example, figure out when do I sell my stock? I'll deal with it when I have a profit. It's a good problem to have. It's not a good problem to have because once you're committed to your position, once you're making a lot of money, or even if you're losing money, you become emotional. If you have this great stock that's rocketing higher, you now have this decision to make. And if it keeps going after you sell it, you feel awful. If you don't sell it and it falls, you feel awful. So there is so much uncertainty in the market, you can't possibly operate like that all the time. You'll be driven crazy by anxiety, and that'll be one reason why even some professionals will freeze up over time. They become so taken aback by all of the anxiety of this decision making that they start making no decisions. So what better way to alleviate the pressure than have a complete systematic process? But it goes beyond that. If you look at the selling part of my strategy in this image here, you can see I mentioned a dollar stop. That dollar stop is something that I kind of created years ago. I was trading on the desk, I was a market maker, and I went through a hard time. And I remember sitting there, it was a couple of mornings, I had my very good friend next to me, Franco, who I'd always used to talk to. He said, Matt, what's wrong? And I say, I don't want to make another mistake. Everything I'm touching lately is just blowing up, you know? So I remember him telling me, Matt, just pick an amount that you're willing to lose on a trade, an amount that won't even bother you, and go with that amount. Whenever you hit that loss, exit the position, go on to the next one, but don't lose that reflex, that ability to make decisions. Once I implemented that, like magic, and I mean he traded on the floor, he'd been around trading for 20 years, so he knew the process. Once I got back into the swing of making decisions and getting one right decision, two right decisions, all the old technique, all the style came back and I was out of my slump. So that dollar stop then became a mainstay of my process. At all times, I know we work with percentages in our trading systems and all the rest, but we live in a world of dollars. The percentages you put on your Excel sheet, at the end of the day, you're gonna look at what's my account value, what did I lose, and that's really what gives you the difficult time sleeping. It's not the percentage, it's the amount of money you lost. So by putting it in dollar form, that relieved a lot of anxiety because I knew in a worst case scenario, that's how much I'm gonna lose, and I'm okay with that. And it took off that pressure. That's one small component of an entire system. That one learning lesson became an important pillar of how I apply things. Likewise, selling into strength if you have gains, if you're seeking dramatic advances in a stock price, like that's what I'm seeking with my growth investing process, we're looking to find these amazing stocks that are growing tremendously and looking for multi-baggers over several weeks, months, whatever it takes. If that's what your goal is, but you just react in a reactionary way when you're up 15, 20, 30%, you say, whoa, that's a great amount of money, and you take it. Well, you're circumventing the whole point of your process. Now, if you don't draw this out, if you don't build this flow chart, again, here you can take a look at what the three pieces look together, buying, holding, and selling, how they're all kind of linked together. Not only will you run into mistakes you're unaware of, how do you iterate? How do you improve yourself over time if you don't know what part of your system is failing? You see, if you break it out into these three different components, buying, holding, and selling, you can go back, do a post-mortem and say, okay, I had a terrible month, I had a terrible quarter, I made a terrible trade. What did I do wrong? Or I did great, I'm doing phenomenal. How come in this environment I did so well, and in another environment I'm awful? What changed? Do I not have any way to identify the environment I'm operating in? It's critical. Now, speaking to the book, How to Make Money in Stocks, that was how I first got into the business. And then I ended up going to market making and pro trading and all, building algorithms and all the rest. But that was the core. And that's where I learned how everything could come together in a systematic process. So this white paper we put together, which is available, you can find the link below the video, is really kind of taking that book, which a lot of people begin with. I know phenomenal traders, and that's the core still of what they operate with. But no two people ever trade the same. You need to take the core principles, adjust it for your risk tolerance, adjust it for your abilities, for the amount of time you want to spend. But to be able to do all that, you have to map it out. So I took all of these core principles from the book, I broke them down by how I understood it, my goals, my expectations, the reason for using different tools, and I put it into this white paper. I've since gone on myself personally to kind of iterate and add all these very specific parts, how I deal with earnings season and all the rest. But this foundation, I want to provide a workable foundation that most people can take, most people especially who are growth investors, and say, okay, this is how all the pieces come together. And then you can modify that for your own purposes. And in reality, this may seem like a fluffy conversation. Like, no, I want to know a specific tool. It's not about just a specific tool. It'd be like asking, like I said, like a programmer, asking an army general, what part of your army is the make or break of a war? There's not one part, it's the system as a whole. It's a systematic process that leads to success over time. And when I say systematic, it doesn't mean it has to be a black and white, like a black box system where a computer makes all the decisions for you. No, you need a process for which you're following that's predetermined. Even if there's some decision making to make along the way, you know within what bounds you're going to be operating. And if you look at any professional process, that's the way it's run. That's the way people iterate. That's how people improve. That's how people optimize. And that's how people obtain long-term success. And this is why in this business, the potentials are enormous. And like I said, I've seen people make millions and then be washed out. That doesn't make sense if you don't understand that, oh, that process worked great in this environment and they just weren't aware that that environment doesn't persist all the time. And the problem is, once you have a bad loss like that, even if you don't wipe out, you just take a series or a long period of drawdown, it's very hard to rebuild the mental capital to regain the confidence to trade again. Your system has to be able to protect your capital, has to be able to protect your psychology. It has to work with your daily life, the amount of time you have to commit to it. It's a holistic thing. Now, of course, get it right, the rewards are tremendous. I mean, far more than what a buy and hold can be, but it takes effort, it takes process. The problem that I see most people run into, even those who want to put in the work, is that most of the material out there addresses one aspect. If you want a book on risk management, you're going to get a book just about risk management. It's statistical, doesn't speak about investing process. You want a book about buy signals, you're going to get a technical analysis book, that's buy signals. You want to research about a fundamental topic, you can research, find out all the reasons why an industry or a company is about to do great. How does that integrate with your portfolio management, your position sizing? The reality is implementing the system of investing, even if each part is simple, bringing it together can be complex. And that's where people fail, because they just don't realize how it all comes together, and they don't realize what are the frailties, the soft parts of their system that can not work well in different environments. It's not fully battle tested. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Again, you can download the white paper at my website. Link is below, CarusoInsights.com. You can follow me on Twitter at trader_mcaruso. We'll be back soon with some new videos. Keep working on that process, keep iterating, and that's the real key to success long term. Talk to you soon.